Hey guys, welcome back to another Hu Tao video. Today I'm going to talk about Hu Tao's best team comps and my early predictions of how she will work as a character, and how she will synergize with certain characters. Keep in mind the teams are put together so that they have more synergy with Hu Tao, and that she can shine the most as the main DPS. I won't be going over her talents and skills too much in detail in this video because there's a lot to cover, but for my future Hu Tao guide I will. Anyways, let's get started. In this video, I will be using Xiangling as a placeholder for Hu Tao. And this is what I think is one of her most efficient teams. Hu Tao, Xingqiu, Sucrose, and Diona, who I think will be the best healer for a Hu Tao team, and I'll explain that in a little bit. First, let's start with Xingqiu. He is known to be one of the best supports for Pyro mains for consistent vaporized reactions. If you main Diluc or Klee, you probably know how beneficial Xingqiu is. Unless Hu Tao has exceptionally strong Pyro applications, I believe Xingqiu will work extremely well with Hu Tao, especially given that she benefits more from stats like Elemental Mastery than, let's say, attack percent, because of her low base attack. Also, Xingqiu's Rain Swords reduce incoming damage and increase your resistance to interruption. This will work well with Hu Tao's high base defense in certain situations, and her Elemental skill, which also increases her resistance to interruption. One downside to Xingqiu is that his swords do heal when they break, so make sure you are careful not to get hit too much when you're just barely under 50% HP, or you will not gain the 33% pyro damage bonus from her second passive talent, or the damage and heal bonuses from her elemental burst. Next up is Sucrose. She has several roles on this team. First, she can crowd control and bring enemies together for Hu Tao to use her charge attacks into a smaller area for her to apply her Blood Blossom. Second, Sucrose can transfer her Elemental Mastery to Hu Tao, and as mentioned before, Elemental Mastery will be a very important stat for her, especially when you're running reactions with Xingqiu and Diona. This will greatly increase her damage on each of her swings with the reactions. Finally, let's not forget about reducing enemies' elemental resistance with the 4-piece Viridescent set. It may be harder to lower enemies' Pyro resistance initially without Bennett or Xiangling, so you would have to lower Pyro resistance on enemies when Hu Tao is done attacking with her elemental skill. Blood Blossom is triggered after 4 seconds after Hu Tao does her last charge attack, which you should do before her elemental skill ends, or after her elemental burst. Finally, I want to talk about why I think Diona will be the best healer for her Hu Tao team. But first, we need to talk about how Hu Tao's elemental burst works and why a controlled healer that can provide shields is best for her. So let's take a look at Hu Tao's elemental burst real quick. We need to look at two things. So if Hu Tao's HP is below or equal to 50% when the enemy is hit, both the damage and HP regeneration are increased. And also this line, upon striking the enemy, regenerates a percentage of Hu Tao's max HP. This effect can be triggered up to 5 times based on the number of enemies hit. So this complicates things. Of course, with any character you want to hit the maximum amount of enemies, but you also don't want to overheal Hu Tao, especially above 70% HP. So the solution is, you want to be at the lowest amount of HP as possible, and that's where a shield solves all the issues. A shield not only gives you the ability to stay at a low amount of HP, but also the ability to hit multiple enemies without overhealing Hu Tao. It also provides security and reassurance that you won't end up dying. Now as for healing, Hu Tao will rarely need a healer except when her HP is extremely low and she's fighting a single target. But remember, your supports need healing as well. To make sure you can control your healing, we have to look at the different types of healers in this game. Circle healers give you the most control of who you want to heal in your party. You can select anyone in your party and stand within their healing circle. This ensures that you will not be healing Hu Tao when she wants to stay at a lower HP range. On a side note, at the end of the video, I'll explain why I don't think Bennett will work well with Hu Tao. And for the other healers, and let's pretend Chi-Chi is here since I don't have her on this account, they either heal by attacking enemies or using their elemental burst. Healers who can heal by attacking enemies is the next best way to control your healing. Although it heals everyone, you can control the amount of healing to a certain extent. And then the worst type of heal would be one with an elemental burst, where it heals everyone a significant amount. Since Diona can provide shields and can control her healing, I believe she would be the best in the healer slot. But if you don't have Diona, I believe Noelle with a 4-piece Petra set would also work as well. Also, real quick, I want to explain how Energy Recharge and Elemental Reactions will work with this team. I believe Hu Tao's elemental skill will be very similar with Child's in terms of gaining energy particles and setting up for elemental reactions. When Child hits enemies during his stance change, he will periodically gain energy particles like this. With the way she gains energy particles and the use of sacrificial weapons with Xingqiu and C1 Sucrose, I believe Hu Tao will gain her elemental burst back quickly and does not need another pyro character as a battery. Also, I would advise putting a 4-piece exile set on Diona for further energy gain for the entire team so they could spam their elemental bursts. So now for the next set of teams, I will be using this specific team format with Hu Tao, Xingqiu and Jean that allows you to add an essential 4th character that can support Hu Tao. Although Jean cannot fully utilize her elemental burst for heals and has to attack enemies to heal, the reason this works is because Jean is combining 2 support characters into one slot, an animal crowd control support with a 4-piece Viridescent set, and healer. So from here, you can add several characters who would work well with Hu Tao in the 4th slot. Here are some amazing supports I believe that will work with Hu Tao. Constellation 2 Chongyun can be a great burst support for Hu Tao. When you use Hu Tao's elemental skill inside Chongyun's elemental skill circle, it will reduce her cooldown time by 15%. So after she's done with her elemental skill, she usually has a 7-second downtime before she can activate her skill again. But Chongyun will reduce that to 4.6 seconds. You'll be able to immediately start attacking with Hu Tao again. Also, after she's done with her elemental skill, Chongyun can do a good amount of damage with his elemental burst and skill with melt reactions. And thankfully, he won't infuse Hu Tao's attacks into cryo since her elemental skill will override it with pyro damage. Next is Albedo. With a 4-piece Petra set, he will be a good burst support for Hu Tao. His second passive talent allows his elemental burst to increase your team's elemental mastery by 125 for stronger vaporized reactions. Also, with his elemental skill, his transient blossoms will also be a nice damage boost on top of Hu Tao's amazing damage output during her elemental skill. The 4-piece Petra set can give Hu Tao a pyro shield that will give her a 35% pyro damage bonus. Although Albedo's burst will be weaker without a 2-piece noblesse set, Hu Tao can make up the damage difference. Zhongli is also a good pick, but you may have to work around his shields. As mentioned before, shields will be very important with Hu Tao, so already he can support her well. His shield also will decrease elemental resistance on enemies. However, you don't always want to use his shield because you do want to take damage and be at the lowest amount of HP as possible. So you will have to balance between lowering enemies' elemental resistance and putting up a shield at very low HP only. After gathering up enemies with Jean's elemental skill, Zhongli can petrify enemies with his burst, which will help Hu Tao with her charge attacks to apply Blood Blossom, keeping enemies in place. Finally, let's talk about Xiangling. In terms of pyro DPS support, Xiangling has always been overshadowed by Bennett, but in a Hu Tao team, this may change. Xiangling's Constellation 1 lowers enemies' pyro resistance by 15% with Goba, and Xiangling's Constellation 6 will give a 15% pyro damage bonus with her elemental burst when it's active. With both constellations combined, this will increase Hu Tao's damage output by a significant amount. A C1 Bennett I would say is much better than a C6 Xiangling under normal circumstances, but this is where Xiangling can finally shine. Finally, I want to make some teams that will make it a little bit easier to play around Hu Tao's elemental skill downtime. This means you want to have another DPS unit. Zhao can come in during this time and can work well with Xingqiu and Jean as well. Child is also a great pick in this type of situation. You can also put any DPS unit that works well with Xingqiu. So instead of these 2 DPS units working together, each DPS unit will work with Xingqiu separately, like this. Now for some notable mentions. I don't think Bennett is unusable with Hu Tao, but I believe he works against her toolkit. His elemental burst will give her a good damage buff at Constellation 1, but it will also heal her when she needs to be at the lowest HP possible. So either you have to nerf his artifacts or nerf his talents so that he heals less. If that is the direction we will go, I believe we simply rely too much on Bennett and should finally find a different approach to this new meta shift with Hu Tao. He can still be a decent battery and a good healer for your supports, but you'll have to be careful with how you use his burst. I would still highly recommend putting Bennett on a second team. And Pyro Resonance won't be a huge benefit to Hu Tao because of her low base attack. But of course, we'll probably find some workarounds to use him when we do a damage showcase against bosses to flex, such as keeping Hu Tao at a very low HP and nerf his healing. Mono can work since she is overpowered and the Omen bonus damage from her burst will definitely help. She won't be able to provide consistent vaporized reactions like Xingqiu, and without Bennett, she can't utilize her burst to the fullest potential. Venti is Venti, and he can probably work with almost any team. If Hu Tao is able to hit enemies consistently in his burst, by all means use him. Ganyu can be a pick since her elemental burst is just overpowered. She is probably the best at cryo applications in the game now for melt reactions. However, just because of the way elements work, Vaporize will be much more consistent as power applications are just too strong for consistent melt reactions. Most likely, Ganyu is the one triggering the melt reactions, which we don't want, so I still highly recommend Xingqiu for Vaporize reactions. Thank you for watching. I'm very excited for Hu Tao just as you. If you liked the video, please make sure to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you think about Hu Tao and some possible team comps maybe I missed. Also, please follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/FrenchTutor_. I'll be streaming almost every day if I'm not making videos. Take care now.